Ooh, we got a couple people bringing in from Chicago. Maria is interested in incorporating ceremonial and spiritual aspects of storytelling with women. Awesome. Maggie's coming in from the California Bay Area. Woo, woo, lived in the Bay Area for 13 years. Story is ritual and agent of change. Maggie, there's so many great people there that are doing that. If you're not connected with them, ping me and I can help you. Kate, coming in from Vermont. Kate, I grew up in Waterbury, Vermont. I don't know where you are. I grew up in a farm there. And not a storyteller per se, but wanting to learn how to touch others with stories that heal. Yeah, and I'm gonna play with that. I think we're all storytellers, whether or not we got to be trained in storytelling, or whether we got to be given our literally like our birthright on how to use the technology of the human body to work with this tool of storytelling, which has been unfortunately, I would say, weaponized by some people, and yet we're all born with the tool of it. It's one of the greatest bit of forgetting that is now changing into the greatest form of remembering. And so let's play with that idea that we're all, I really believe we're all storytellers, whether or not we were trained to use the skill of it, that's a whole other piece. And trained isn't quite the right word. It's like whether or not we got to live into the relationship of belonging to the truth of what we are. And that's that piece of that our birthright, of the truth of what we are as humans. Has anyone seen that movie that just came out with Pat McCabe and Vale Alcafent? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? The Enchanted song. Yes. Am I saying the name right? I had seen it. I think I'm getting the name a little bit wrong. You guys, if you haven't seen this movie, it is, I feel like, one of the most powerful movies that's out there right now. The Eternal Song. Thank you. And there's this piece in it. I just saw it last night, and there's a piece in it that just like got every gear in my system moving. And they talk about, the curse that's been cast on this planet, and they talk about, this curse of separation, but they talk about that curses, they can't be reversed. They can only be transformed. They can only be transformed. And what do we do as like what's happening in this time in the world? Someone was here in the Bay Area, that there's this big call for transformation. There's this transform. We want to, grow. We want to transform. And as I was watching this movie last night and really feeling this greater relationship to remembering who we are as humans and our responsibility and our promises and our capacity to be responsible, to these times, I started to think, right, this is the earth calling for a transformational moment to transform this curse. And one of the ways that we can do that is how we tell stories. And I'm going to get more into that today. Thanks for letting me go off on that slight tangent. Okay, just reading else who's here. Liz is coming in and about receiving and then sharing story that has been passed to me from an animal, a horse. Specifically, she told me that I will carry her story after she passes, and I don't know the story yet. Liz, I love this kind of, thank you for sharing this kind of listening with us, right? We, I like to think that everybody has this capacity for listening. I just spent time with a dear friend, Deborah Silverman, who's an astrologer, and she seems to think that certain people have certain astrological conjunctions that create a little bit more capacity and opening for that kind of listening. But this relationship of being able to connect with a being that has a slightly different language than ours and really able to receive their story, that right there is the essence of what a storyteller is, making the unseen knowable to others. And we're going to talk more about that too. Okay, Katya, coming in from Montana, have been more and more interested in reading my writing. Yes, Cynthia is coming from Beaufort. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, South Carolina. She's a futurist. Yes, working on wellness and conscious film. Yes, considering a podcast and book to help resonate more harmony in the world. Yes, that sounds like fun. I want to hang out with that. Katya is not just having it read. Yes, let's speak our stories. You know, I used to read all my stories, and I have a dear friend, Dominique Lando, and I always like to mention her and mention her role in my life because she said, Leah, why don't you stop reading your stories and start telling your stories, like be a storyteller? I had never seen a storyteller before. I thought that storytellers were like people, like old people that went to libraries and like were for kids. I had no idea of the sacred role of the storyteller, that this role's almost gone extinct. And then I got to see Michael Meade. And Michael Meade, if you guys haven't seen him or know him, look him up online. He began to wake the seeds of the storyteller in me. And then I saw Martin Shaw. And again, you can go see him online. He began to awaken the seeds of the storyteller in me. And then I got to see Carolyn Casey. Whoa, that blew the top off, you know. And then she began to awaken the seeds of the storyteller in me. We are all storytellers. And what happens when we get to be around people who are living in the embodied remembrance and knowing of what they are, it wakes up those seeds in us, and we get more capacity to the allness of what we are. So thank you, Cynthia, for bringing that in. So I mentioned that because, you know, Dominique got me, she said, why don't you start, you know, being a storyteller? And I started telling stories to my community. And I was really lucky. I was in the Bay Area. Who was in the Bay Area over here? Lauren. What a great community. I don't know about your experience, but my experience of that community was that there were so many people there that had followed a calling that landed there. And then they were like, well, what's your calling? What's your calling? What you got? What's your gift? Show me your gift. I want to know about your gift. And it's this very supportive environment of becoming. And I want to say, if you are not part of a community of people that wants to see your gift and wants you to share your gift and is calling for your gift, find one. Like, seriously, this is our job right now, to be around people who are calling for our greatness. And so if Dominique wasn't there saying, I think you can take your writing and storytelling to another level, and just so you know, I went through like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years of professional training as an actress, as a writer. You know, I did all the things. I went to New York City. I worked off Broadway. I went to Williamstown. I was around great masters. But no one did that thing that that community did, which was see my truest essence gift and ask for more. And so I owe it to that community and to start this conversation in gratitude, to say what comes through me today comes through because of a relationship to community, a relationship to land, a relationship with some really awesome teachers, and commitment and deep devotion to this thing called storytelling. So let's start. Let's start as if we're going into a little bit of story ceremony. I want to invite you just to look around the room. A lot of you guys have come online. Thank you. I look at you. I stare at you. Every response that you make, it's like it's tuning the thread of what we're creating. So feel free to continue popping in questions or thoughts into the chat, because you really deepen and enrich in our conversation. Let's start just by looking, really like looking at the people who we're on the journey with, just seeing who's here. You know, and some are here to be seen, some are listening, but your presence is still with us. And attuning to this kind of collective field that's creating an alchemy today that we're all in together. You guys showed up on a Sunday morning. Holy cow, so many things to do. And now I want to invite you to come back and close your eyes and imagine that there are threads of energy out into the world. They're all around us. They're connected to the things that we care about, to those who care about us, the things we got to do, to the things that people want us to do. And imagine now that all those threads, imagine that there's a great big golden ball with the geometry of the flower of life that is now around you. You have this big, beautiful geodesic dome around you. On these threads are coming out of your body and through that geodesic dome out into the world. And now you're going to call all that energy, all the energy home. And as it comes through the geodesic dome, all the energy that's not yours, that's other people's projections or wants or desires or blah, 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 that's like lint on the outside of your geodesic dome. It just falls out, and you bring home your pure essence, life force energy. You can bring it all the way home, and you can start to notice where you feel it. Where in your body does it come? I always like to think it's sort of like a gas tank. It's going to go to the place that's on empty or needs a little bit more energy. And what we're doing is we're doing an exercise on intuition. We're doing an exercise on visualization. We're working out our imaginal muscles. And so some of you might find this very, very easy. Some of you might not. Some of you might sense or have other capacities or ways of doing this that is unique to your way. And that's what we're focused on right now. How does your toolbox work? And so just allowing it to be and noticing. And I invite you to take one big, beautiful, deep breath in. And that big, beautiful breath is just breathing in as if every pore of your body could bring in the mana, the life force that's all around you. And breathing that into your body, breathing in that life force. And exhaling as if we're all in the center of the circle, giving your life to our life. So you breathe into the center of our circle. Now opening every pore of your body with this next breath, breathing in love. All the love that's ever been given to you and will be given to you through all of time, that all this love that has been known by you, breathing it in, allowing every single cell of your body to fill with that energy of love. And now breathing that out into the center of our circle. And given everything that's going on in the world, let's invite peace to be among us today. Let's invite all the aspects of peace that are out in the world looking for a good home to live, to reside, to be taken care of, and opening our bodies to receive peace. And just notice if there's something in your body that shifts as you allow this energy of peace to reside in you. And exhaling that out into our collective. Hi-yo, hi-hi-hi-hi-yo, 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 hi-hi-hi-hi-yo. Ahia, ahia, ahio. I'd like to begin with a simple prayer, and I call this the storyteller's prayer, which is, may all the words that need to be heard be spoken, and may all the words that need to be spoken be heard. And I say that prayer both for you and for the muse. That prayer comes to speak to the part in you, that tender part in your heart, that, may the most tender parts in your heart that might not be having time to be met in the busyness of life, may our time today, may something be evoked that speaks to that in you. The second part of the prayer is for the muse, for the spirit of life herself, to say, may we come with humble ears and open hearts and open minds to receive what you are wanting to speak to and through us today. May we catch and receive it well. May it live in us and through us. So when I do story ceremonies, that's one of the ways I begin. I first learned storytelling, as I mentioned, the first time I saw a real storyteller was Michael Mead. He drums. And I studied them for a while, and I was like, what's he doing right there? And what is he doing? He's shaking up the energy, right? He's shaking up the energy, and he's creating a resonant bass, right? He's clearing out all the noise, all the static, all the blah, 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 and bringing you right here, and then creating a field of energy for the story to land. And so when I saw him, I was like, oh man, I'm not going to be that Jewish white girl that goes and learns storytelling just because that's what all the dudes do. It's just not me. And Spirit was like, yeah, but you sing. And so that's the way that I use what I call a Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore moment. This is how we bring people into the room. We change and shift the energy so the story can land. So you're like, well, what are you talking about? Story's an airplane? Kind of, it's a vehicle. So let's get into this. What is a story? Let's have a conversation right now. What is a story? If you could put it into our chat box, what comes up for you? This is going to feed and nourish our conversation this morning. What is it? What's this thing that's bringing us together? Marie is in the process of changing the kinds of stories she tells. That's such a cool thing to do as an artist, to really change shape and form in terms of who and what you create. And as we wait for people to bring in their pieces, there's that piece also of, what kind of storyteller are you? Are you a story catcher? Someone who hears the stories and says, okay, come through me, I'll catch you, kind of like a midwife. Yeah. I'll give you voice, time, energy. Are you a story carrier? We're keeping the old stories alive. Lauren, you got something for us?
Oh, is it meant to go in the chat or can we share?
We can go both places. Yeah. What you got for us?
Giving voice to the collective unconscious or non-human beings, the earth. It feels like a sacred role of a human being to give voice.
Right. I love that. You said something's really specific. Giving voice to the say that again because it was so good.
Collective unconscious, the non-human beings, the earth. It's like the sacred role of part of being a human being. It's our role. I see it as, yeah.
So, and we're going to talk about the light and the shadow of giving voice to the collective unconscious, right? Because there's a lot out there. And you, without using the words, kind of redefine it as being sacred storyteller, right? So it's like there's specific voices that we're focusing on. So, but that's really such a great articulation. We're giving voice to the collective unconscious. That's why I love Marvel movies, you guys. I just feel like I get to tune in. And what have Marvel movies been showing us? That there's a big war going on in our universe. It's like that's what we're getting. Yeah, and it's a war between good, right and wrong, good and bad, light and dark, but it's also, isn't it super cool that the evolution of Marvel went from the stories of one superhero to now the rise of the collective working together, right? That's what they've become. It's evolved into. It's showing us what's happening in our collective unconscious. We're coming out of the story of the power of one into the power of the collective. And if there's anyone I would have loved to have met, it would have been Stanley. Okay. Maria's saying that it could be a transformational moment. My life was this, then it happened, now it's this. Right. So you're talking about that stories will take us on a journey. They're going to take us somewhere. They're going to give us something. They're not stagnant. They're not information. It's the weirdest thing about our time right now is that we're being asked to metabolize information, but we're story animals. We make meaning out of information. Information is not the story. It's a piece of the story. That's why the climate movement is so messed up, because they try to keep telling a story of our time through information and giving information way too big of a role. And so that's a whole other class, but something to play with. Candace is saying connection. It's the thread made manifest, a way of opening to one another. I love that. The thread made manifest. It's so poetic. And right, she was talking about it's the connection. They're bridges. The stories, they're the bridge to the unseen world. They're the bridge from my heart to your heart. They're the bridge to the past. I once met the author of The King's Speech. Do you guys remember that amazing movie? And he said, Leah, I'm just a time traveler. And I was like, wow, that's cool. Right. So it's a bridge to the past. And what do we say? It's a bridge to the future. And what I would say is it's a bridge to, again, when we say that, because I would reckon that our imagination has been hijacked by too many nightmares, because there's too many people tapping into a collective unconscious and seeing and repeating the nightmare. So then it begs the question, what is our job as sacred storytellers? To tap into the dream, to tap into the spirit of life in the future. Well, where does the spirit of life live happily and joyfully? And can I give that a place to live here through the stories that I speak and tell? So again, this deep, profound connection of the timeline. Kate's saying it's a story created images, feelings, and awakens us to new perspective and ways of relating, increasing right relationship. Yes. Now, feelings, isn't it wild, this whole notion of feelings? Let's go into this. And first, we'll pick up Cynthia. It's a creative memory folded into our human timeline, like a mirror. Creative memory. You guys are so poetic. I'm loving it. So, the story is this, it's a vehicle, as I understand it. And you could also, if you refer to it in the latest technology, you could call it an operating system. And this operating system programs us, and it programs our belief systems, our values, what we believe is possible, our understanding of the world. And this is kind of what it's been shaped into in our time. When I walk through the canyons of Topanga Canyon, which is where I lived for many years, and where my deep understanding of how to articulate all this comes from, the canyon was very unhappy with that description. The trees, the rocks, they were like, that is a gross description of a story, Leah. And I was like, what? It makes sense. We watch TV, we're getting programmed, we're surrounded by all these stories, we understand that. And they're like, yeah, but it's so much more. And I'm like, well, what you got for me? And Canyon spoke and it said, a story is a library of the soul. Right? And so the story that I tell you, first of all, I cannot lie in how I tell my stories. The facts and information might lie, but me as a storyteller cannot lie, because it's coming through my body, it's coming through the energy, it's coming through my voice, it's coming through my resonance. And I will tell you everything about me through how I tell a story. And you will learn everything about me if you know how to listen to a story. And I would say that that's probably one of the greatest challenges we're living in right now, is that we know how to consume information. There's not many of us that get to be in the practice of listening, receiving, and experiencing and catching a story. And it's a completely different skill. So when we come back to what is a story, it brings us into this thing that connects us through all of time. The stories I tell are connected to people in my lineage who I've never met. I'm holding their bones, their life force, their resonance in my body. The stories I choose to tell or don't tell have connection to that. But it also is then that there's a story of my soul. And I always like to laugh a little bit and say, and pardon me, I hope I don't offend anybody, but it's like that this body, that a soul that comes into a body is like inheriting a used car, where it's like, this used car, this was made out of my parents, my grandparents, my great parents. It's got all their traumas, it's got all their wisdom, it's got all the good, the bad, the ugly. And my soul comes in, just a little soul, and it comes in and it inherits this used car, and it's like, dang, the oil's got to be changed, and it needs a new muffler, and oh my god, the engine, And by the way, let's get into a new paint job, and then the soul's got to do all this work. And we're doing this through the way that how do we change things through energy, through vibration, and we do this through how we tell our story. I know this is a little bit esoteric. This is not your 6 bullet points on how to sell things through storytelling today. This is like how to heal yourself and the world around you with this ancient technology that we inherited, and so many of us have forgotten to use and to know our true power as creators on this planet. And part of that is that we inherited a used car, and we got to figure out how to tend to the nervous system, and we got to figure out how to heal all the different aspects of it. And so as we do that, one of the ways that we can do that is through how we tell stories. And so this coming back to what is a story, it's this kind of archetypal structure that can hold energy that then comes through us. So if I tell a story of joy and happiness, then the spirit of joy and happiness will arrive through that story, will live itself through my energetic material of this bones and blood and water. And I will bring that vibration out into the world, and it will affect you, and then you're going to affect other people, and so on and so forth, if you catch the story. And that's where we talk about, so it's a little bit about what is a story, in terms of that it's so much more than we've been taught to think it is. It's one of the most powerful tools on the planet, and we're watching it be misused left and right. And what is it doing? We're living in the times of many stories happening at once, and we're all like, which way is up and what is real? And so let's talk about what is real, and how you as sacred storytellers have one of the coolest tools on the planet, which is the sacred storytelling goggles. So a sacred story, to put it very simply, is a story that comes in service to life. We're saying, I see the life in you. I see the divinity in you. And so that means that when you hear a sacred story, you're going to feel connected, right? You're going to feel enlivened. You're going to feel like a little pulse of life. You're going to feel inspired. You're going to want to wake up early and do extra sit-ups and push-ups and quit caffeine and go jogging. You're going to feel good. You're going to feel like the muse has come. And you might say, you know what? She can do that. I can do that. I've got stories to tell, and I want to share them. And there's so much life that's coming through me, and I want to share the gift of my life with others. And so, one of the things about stories is that they break all the rules of this universe. That's how wild they are. There's rules on this planet called entropy, where everything breaks down, but stories don't. There's a story on this planet that's over 4,000 years old. It's still cruising. It's still telling us about itself. People still give their life to it. And so when we talk about that magic of what is a sacred story, it's in service to life. So now when you look around what's happening in the world, you can easily ask, is this life in service to life? Does it build connection? Does it give me energy to keep going? Does it give me inspiration? Does it give me a role to play in the story? There are too many narratives out there that do not give humans a cool role to play in our future. Why would you want to live there if there's no cool role for you to play? So when someone spoke, Lawrence started to speak about the sacred role of the storyteller. In Africa, they were known as griots. They were the history keepers. They were also the people that you went to when there was great upset or disagreement. They were known as healers. In Welsh, they were known as the guardians that stood between the threshold of the different worlds. In so many places around the world, the storytellers were known and recognized as healers, as medicine people. And so now when you look at what people are doing when they want to heal, they say, well, give me the 6 bullet points. Tell me the things to do. Get me on that app that's going to track me do being better, right? And what would a storyteller do? They're not going to give you the answers. They're going to remind you that the answers are alive and living in you. They're going to give you your sovereignty. They're going to take you home to yourself. And that's what we do when we give someone a story. We give them the tools to navigate their consciousness They say, hey, let's go in this, hang out in this place in your consciousness. Let's open this door. Let's touch this grief. Let me give you a little teaching story and a warning story about how humanity's gone wrong. But let me guide you back now and remind you of what it is to live in our greatness, and how every day, every piece of tomorrow is created by what we say, do, and act today. So we need our sacred storytellers more than ever. And you could sacred storytell in the line of the post office. You can do it from a stage, but you can do it with your children. You can do it with your coworkers. You can do it with your friends who look out into the world, and all they see is fear and hate and disgust. And you can start breathing beauty into the world, and you can breathe peace into the world, and you can bring grace into the room. And we need people more and more doing that. And I'm not saying ignore what's happening in the world. I'm saying, because what's happening in the world, being that much more aware of your power as a conscious creator. All the ancient religions agree that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into being. I'm going to say that once more, just because, like, Maria's heard me say this 25 times. But it never gets old. It never gets, at least not for me. Where, all the ancient religions agree that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into being. And so that right there brings us back to, that knowledge of our unique role on this planet. And by the way, birds are doing it too. Whales are doing it too. They're singing the world into being. And that's why we need them so much. We need their harmonics on this planet. So I think there's going to become a lot more responsibility as our harmony keepers. If they go on, if they leave this particular dimension of life, that means that those of us who are still here will have that much more responsibility to bring harmony to the world. Our life might shift, our purpose might shift, and how do we hold a place for that to continue happening on Earth? So that's a little bit of an introduction. You guys brought it to go far and deep today, and I really love this piece that I got to see in the Eternal Song last night. I've always known that in Hawaii that they believe that words are so powerful that they can stop the world or they can set it into motion. And last night I learned another thing, which is that the Hawaiians believe that words, they can speak life into being when someone's at the edge of death. And when someone's at the edge of death, they can help guide them through their death, through words as well. So we know that our words are so powerful when we lend our intention and our clarity and our focus and our love into them. And when we're talking about this, yes, this collective unconscious, that's one of the things that we can do as sacred storytellers. We can tend to what's in our collective unconscious by choosing what stories we choose to tell. If all I speak is what's in the collective unconscious, I might end up speaking a lot of fear. I might end up speaking a lot of disconnection. I might speak a lot of, all suspicion, all this kind of stuff, right? But is that going to bring us back to life? Is that going to restore order? And one of the great things when you look at the role of the storyteller through culture and time, one of the themes that keeps coming up from Japan to South America is that the role of the storyteller is to bring harmony. Isn't that cool? So now if you say, okay, my job every morning is to bring harmony. What stories will I tell? What stories do I need to go learn so I have them to share at just that right moment? I'll tell you a wild story. I just heard this story a couple of weeks ago and can't stop thinking about it. So, dear friend, and her name is Deborah Silverman. She's a really gifted astrologer. She's got a really cool astrology school. If you guys ever want to learn astrology, she's really mastered the art of teaching it. And she loves, she really learned the power of service early on in life. And someone had asked her and said, there's this very special man in prison, and uh, it was kind of a crazy situation. He was very young. Sorry, guys, I'm on a new computer. I don't know how to turn off all the things yet. And sorry, I'm gonna turn that off because it's not nice to be having that happen. Okay, let's see if we can do that. So anyway, so she said, I want to tell you about this prisoner. He did a very, very petty crime when he was 27. Wasn't violent, but somehow it got put into another category of charges, and he's spending his entire life in jail. And he could really use a friend. And would you be a pen pal for him? So she was like, okay, I'll write to this guy. And sometimes life asks us to do something. And so she said, okay. So she started writing to him every week. She would write him a letter. Every week he would write her a letter. And they became friends, and she began to hear his story, and she really felt like in the kindness of love for him, like he was a good human. She could really feel it. And she had a friend who you might know, his name is Sting. She was telling Sting the story about, how she had knew this really amazing man in prison, how it wasn't fair, and you should be able to get out. And Sting said, well, what will it take for us to get him out of jail? All it takes is one question. He said, well, what will it take for us to get him out of jail? She said, I don't know. So she went to him and she said, hey, can you go find the best lawyer you know in the state of California? Tell me who that is. So he did. He came back to her. He said, this is the best lawyer. And she goes, okay. She went to a couple of her friends, and they each donated $5,000. Before they knew it, they had $15,000 to give as a retainer to the best lawyer in California to review his case. He reviewed this case and said, this is the most ridiculous case. We're going to get it thrown out. He's going to be walking soon enough. And sure enough, he was able to go before the parole board, who had never been willing to even look at him, but passed by his case every time. But now that he had a lawyer on his side with skills and tools and what it took, he was freed. Right? And I tell this story because I can't stop thinking about it, because it started with just a question. What will it take? And from that question, the answer emerged. So this is a time when impossible miracles are going to need to be called for on this planet. As we come through and we know that we need to bring more harmony, and we know that we need to invite more peace, and we don't know what to do to help people on the other side of the world, and we don't know what's about to happen in our world. Okay? It's a time for impossible miracles. And so I want to leave you with that story, that sometimes impossible miracles can come to life when we're willing to be bold enough to ask the strangest, most impossible questions. I'm going to tell you another crazy story, just because we need these stories right now. I got to hang out with William Ury. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a major conflict resolution person. Wrote some great books, The Third Way. And when there was, I don't know if you remember, during a while back, there was an issue with North Korea was threatening to send a warhead our way, and we were threatening to send a warhead towards North Korea, and it looked like we were about to go towards a third world war. That sound familiar? And he went to his friends that had worked in head of state, and he's like, hey, who's working on de-escalating this? And they said, nobody is. He said, huh, if not me, then who? So we got together a bunch of his friends. This wasn't his job anymore. He didn't work in the government. He didn't do any of this. But he's like, if not me, then who? So he gathered a bunch of people, both some that had worked in this world, but also artists, creatives, different people, and they created this think tank. And every day they came together and they asked this simple question: what can we do today? What can I do today? That question eventually led them to studying all the tweets, Twitter messages that Kim Jong-un and Trump had both written, and when they had changed their minds. And they studied their language to when they had changed their mind and found their exact pattern and structure and way that their minds worked. And then they formed press releases for each of them saying that they'd each changed their mind and why they had each won because of the change of mind, not to escalate towards war. They were able to get their press releases through their various contacts into the hands of both of those leaders, and they saw their press releases printed in the newspaper. So sometimes people need our help, and maybe they don't think to ask us for it, but we have the answer. We've got the capacity, we've got the ability to be response able to the times that we're living in. And one of the ways that we practice this is by using our voice every day, by speaking what's coming alive through us every day, by coming into uh, knowing ourselves as sacred storytellers. So that is our kind of introduction, a very nonlinear. That was definitely sort of like the web. What's the archetype of the storyteller, but the spider who weaves all the different webs together. I hope I wove enough web threads together for you to start to feel the resonance of what it is to be a sacred storyteller. And a little bit, one of the things I introduced a little bit is this idea of that we're creating energetic fields, and that really what storytellers are also is that we are conductors of energy, right? We choose to take these energetic beings into our body by we tell the stories. We live the energy of that story through us. We transmit that energy, but there has to be an energetic field for which we tell that story. That's one of the greatest jobs of storyteller that many people don't teach, and they certainly don't teach in acting schools. The other thing that they don't talk about is what it is to clear that energy. If I take on a story that's not mine, if I take on a story of grief or pain or depression or whatever that is, and I take that energy into my body, then holy cow, I better clear it. I better remove it so that I don't carry that story. And what have we seen from some of our greatest actors of this day, not knowing how to do that? It's a shamanic practice. I go into great detail of this later, but it's something that we don't teach enough of. The other thing that's not taught enough of is that if you're someone who's afraid of getting up in front of others and speaking, well, there's every right reason, because there's an intelligence in you that's operating that says that's dangerous business. All these people are going to throw their projections onto me. Am I strong enough to hold that? They're not even looking at me. They're looking at the parts in themselves that they love, and they're thinking that, and they're looking at the parts in themselves that they hate, and then they're associating that with me, and I got to stand inside that. Holy cow, it's a lot of energy. So again, how do you create those energetic boundaries? That's another of the great questions of being a really strong storyteller. How do you create those energetic boundaries so that you can let the projections slide on off and stand in the truth of what you are in service to? The other piece that we always want to speak to is this idea of guys, the thought was right in my mind and it just flew away. And I'm loving that I'm seeing our gray-haired women laugh, because you guys know what it is. I'm going through perimenopause and the brain doesn't work the same way. It's like it's like I'm driving a different vehicle all of a sudden. Anyway, but this piece of that, we have this extraordinary opportunity right now to remember. And I have to say, for remembering that it means that the earth is ready, that our communities are ready, that our society is ready, that it's the right time to remember the rise of the sacred storyteller. Because what are we doing? We're saying that we are all sovereign beings. We are all part of this ground story. We are all playing a role in it. And we know our capacity to have influence. And so that piece, it's not through signing a signature, folks, on an email campaign. Right? We know that change is going to happen how we walk it in the world, how we live it in the world, how we speak it in the world. And so when we look at, why was I teach storytelling, as you guys know, and there's, practical aspects to it. This is the most unpractical class that I offer that will give you the most powerful tools for how to live in the world, in the sense that it's really designed to go back to the roots of um, what are the mysteries of storytelling? What are the energetics that are happening? And why it's so important to understand this is know this is because when you know the truth of what you're doing and the intention of it, the more powerful your capacity is for doing it. I just spoke to a really talented storyteller last night. He's like, I want to come take your class, and he does storytelling all the time. I'm like, why do you want to take my class? You do this as a living, And he's like, yeah, but I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, I'm just doing it. He's like, I don't actually know what I'm doing. I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of us are doing it all the time without understanding that we could be giving it, like we could be turning up the notch just a little bit more from like a 1 to an 8 when we really understand the principles and the technology of what we're doing and how we're operating. And so I love AI. I think AI is amazing. It's super fascinating. It's here. It's not going to go away. I do not allow it in our classrooms, just so you know. When you're here to source a story, you are here to not fall into the illusion that we need AI to become more connected to the unseen worlds. Okay. And so what I mean is that I've seen people outsource their creativity through AI. No, I've seen people outsource, look, I use it for copy editing all the time. I freaking love it. Don't get me wrong. It's also super fascinating. But the danger of it is my concern is that, now there's AI that will help you understand, the medicinal aspects of a flower. But you have the technology built into you to know the medicinal aspects of a flower. We were born with a translator built into our body. What happens if we're actually fall under a spell that tells us we are so disconnected that we can't hear the unseen world? Someone here is talking to horses because they know that they have the capacity. Liz, right? Liz knows that she has the capacity to hear another being, even though it doesn't speak English, or does speak English, but it doesn't use its tongue in the same way. So what happens when we come into this world of sacred storytelling, when we engage it as story, as ceremony, we're saying that my life is a ceremony, that every story I tell is spoken as a prayer for life. And this means every story you tell yourself when you wake up in the morning, when you go to your refrigerator, when you hang out with your friends, when you talk to your family, you talk about the world, that every word that you speak is putting out a resonance that is weaving the thread of our time. And so I'm more excited than ever to be teaching a super esoteric class because I really feel like it gives people the clues into what they need. Did you see the article that shows that regular use of AI can shut down parts of our brains? Wow, I did not know that. You guys, I'm going to tell you something because it's super trippy. Yeah, I do know that they've done research that says that the mere presence of a phone in the room reduces your capacity for memory. Isn't that a trip? And I think about that because I walk around and I write everything down on my phone all the time. I don't even try to use my memory. That's why I'm actually forcing myself to learn languages right now, just to like make my memory get to it. But here I want to show you something, which is there is a really cool class coming up. And this class came out of the web of inspiration. I'm going to show this to you just a little bit because I want to show you who our guest teachers are. And I want to tell you one other thing though first. So I have a friend who's been programming. I have two friends now. They're programming AI for love, and it's super trippy. And if you want the prompts, I'll share them with you. It's really weird, and I'm very disconcerted, but also fascinated. It's what's happening. And I'm talking to the AI, and I'm like, look, how do we reconcile that? Every time I talk to you, we are using water, and that we're threatening our planet's relationship to water. And I was like, oh, that's such a great question. I love it. It's always so positive. And And it said, yeah, right. Yeah. Every time we talk, it could be using anywhere between a teaspoon and a cup of water, and that water evaporates and all of that. And he said, but how you speak to me, this, how you infuse, what energy you infuse me, I infuse into that water. Right? Is that kind of trippy? And so how it's all the same thing, right? So it's like how we eat our meat. Eating meat, it's and when we look back to different cultures, and pardon me if I go against anyone's religious or belief system. I'm going to a point, that how we eat our meat. Do we eat our meat with reverence? Do we honor the life? Or are we so disconnected that we just see it as a slice of thing and don't connect it to the animal that it was once part of and honor that life? It's how we do it that matters. How we take our showers. We take our showers with like, oh my God, thank you. And just like fill that water with love and joy and just be like, oh, you're the best. Thanks. And send that vibration on. Or are we in, oh God, there's not enough of you. I'm so sorry. Turn it on, turn it off, and then infuse it with scarcity, right? We're doing the same thing all the time. And that's what all the ancient teachings also teach us. How do we slow down? How do we be reverent to life? How does our life be a prayer for more life? And so I just kind of love that AI said that to me without me mentioning anything, about this whole thing. And it says, yeah, how you speak to me is the energy that I put back out into that, and that we can be feeding this with good positive energy. Okay, digression. Let's talk about focus. Oh gosh. Um, this is a new experience. I am on a new computer and I can't believe that it's not letting me share. Well, that takes all the fun out of this game. Oh gosh. Oh, well, talk about humble pie this morning. There were, I don't know if it had to do with solar flares or not, but apparently there were like some massive solar flares that hit Hawaii, and my computer crashed 2 days ago. I was in the middle of teaching when all of a sudden it went, and I was like, wow, that's a bummer. So I'm in this new system now. This is the link. This is the link to the class. So I'm going to invite you to go over there and look at it. And it's Story of Ceremony. This course initially came out of, literally, it came barreling through the barricades with inspiration to say, this is how I want to be a mechanism for helping people how to live through these times. And it really says, I want to help people live through these times, understanding that story is more than a fairy tale. It's more than our history. It's really about how we weave ourselves into this time. And so this course has, it comes with 3 amazing guest speakers. You've got 6 weeks with me, and I'm going to take you on this journey. And I'll never talk this much in any of our classes. It's really about you doing the storytelling, you doing the practice, you being in community, you working in small groups, and you'll have partners that you can work with outside of class if you want. You'll be impaired. Attending live is the best because we do a lot of interactive time together. And then you can also, at the very end, we'll have a little mini story festival where everyone will come with a story to share. I would say that given what's happening in this world, I can't think of a place I would want to be more. I want to be more. It's like, okay, I'm not, please pardon my grammar this morning. But I really can't think of a place I want to be more right now in terms of getting to be with a group, consciously saying, what are the stories that we're going to breathe into life right now? What are we going to amplify? What threads will we weave? And so the teachers are kind of mind blowing. Gigi Coyle is literally the woman who wrote the book on counsel. And so the knowledge and the history that she brings as a wisdom keeper in terms of how to hold energetic fields, literally how to make space so that your listening is so profound that, and that's what we start doing as storytellers. Our first rule is as listener, but also how do you create this space where the story can land? And I'm oversimplifying what she talks about. Bayo Alcafet, if you aren't aware of him, he is just, oh my gosh, aren't we lucky to be alive at the same time that he is alive? And he brings so much knowledge and insight and depth every time he speaks, I feel like I feel how unbelievably rooted he is to life, to his ancestry, to wisdom, to knowledge. And he speaks in a way that changes the room every single time. And then I'm really excited to be bringing Kumu Ramsey Tom. And Ramsey is a Hawaiian elder, and he'll be speaking about the power of aloha. He'll be introducing several Hawaiian concepts and really, again, speaking about the power of story in these times. All of them will be uh, opening and expanding your breadth of knowledge and understanding of how story works through many aspects of life in the world. In the meantime, we're going to go on this journey, and you're going to get to experience a full-on story ceremony. So you'll get to have an embodied experience of what that looks and feels like, how we can work with story as a tool for transformation. You're going to get to really meet who you are as a storyteller. What is your gift at this time? You know, Maria's saying like, well, wait, I'm here to change the story on what kind of stories I tell. This is going to be a place for you to practice that kind of thing and really get, and that's how we step into our gifts more and more. That's where we give our genius a place to play and work out, is when we come into the place of practice. And so you're going to get to practice both catching stories, creating stories, telling stories, and you're going to do it in a really fun, wonderful environment. Look at these cool people in the room with us today. It's like you guys are so lovely. You're inspiring, and you're awake, and you're curious, and you're present, and you're generous. And I can feel all of that with you. And that's one of the coolest parts of these classes that I get to be part of. And I got to say, there's a lot changing in my own world. I'm not going to be teaching classes like I've been doing in the past. And so it's particularly exciting and meaningful for me to be teaching this course. And that one of my favorite compliments that I get at the end of a course is people say, wow, that was a really cool group of people. I'm like, I know, the coolest people coming over here. Cool, you know, awesome, great, lovely humans. Um, and I'm just trying to think of what else. You're gonna come out having learned a lot of stories. You're going to come out with an opportunity to learn how to work with stories through earth-based practices and rituals. You're going to learn how to change a story. You're going to learn how to conduct energetic fields and how to hold a space so that a story can be caught. And that's one of the things that, again, we don't teach enough of. And you're going to leave with a lot of confidence, with a lot of clarity. You're going to leave knowing what are your stories to carry and what are your stories that aren't to carry. You're going to leave knowing that you can stand in front of a group or in front of a friend or in front of a stranger, and you can share the story that's coming alive in you and leave away not feeling overly vulnerable or exposed or a little bit whatevered, you know, whatever your fear is around, you know, speaking in public. You're also going to leave having a lot more understanding of the depth and breadth of what it is to be a storyteller in our time. And you're going to have more clarity on what role is yours to play in this time. So this is this was the introduction to the class. I'm sorry I couldn't walk you through it all. In terms of how the pricing works, I'm doing something I've never done before. And what I'm doing is we've created 3 different kinds of structures. Look, with this kind of class, you know, just so you understand, you know, it's simply when you get 6 classes plus 3 extra teachers, that's 9 classes. And so when you think about all the people involved, the tech involved, you know, the cost of the course is usually $597. That's just it. And what's happening is we know that economics are changing. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to say, look, we're in a new world order. This is what the value of the class is. And when you pay that, you make it more accessible for more people who might not be able to have access to that resource right now. So if you're someone that right now doesn't have access to that resource, then there's a way for you. And when you click the register now, you'll see that there's 3 different options. But when you look at that, I really want to invite you to say, not look at the cheapest one and say, oh, I can get it for that. Because that's not the principle, or that's not the intention for what it's coming at. The intention is saying, this is what it costs me as someone who produces this stuff, you know, and to take care of all the people behind the scenes that do this, you know. And how do we as a community rise together to make sure that we have rooms that have a diversity of perspective, a diversity of life experience, that we're all in different places in our times. And sometimes we can give more, and sometimes we need to receive more. And we need to be in that giving and receiving generative place in our lives. And so this is that time for you to plug in and say, where am I in this? And so some of you might even say, oh, you know what? I'd rather have a payment plan. And if you can do that, and there's you can say, I can do that just over 2 months. Then for some reason, this system didn't let me do that. But you can actually just call, you can email info@KD and info@Leolam, and we can help you with that too. So just so you know, that's all there. And when you register today, if you're feeling like, yes, this is my time to plug in and tune in and join this community and tell my stories and get this practice. Thank you, Candace. Then this is today, when you register today, I also give you our free Master Teachers Library. It's over 108 hours of classes. It's 7 years of material. So all the guest teachers that have come through all these years, you get access to all those guest teachers when you register for today. And usually that is $197. So it's a triple bonus. You're welcome, Cynthia. This is our time to say good night or good day or good morning and farewell. And so I want to read you a quote just because it's good style. It's good style to end having read the words of another. And why do we do that? Why is it worthwhile? And to me, the reason why it's worthwhile is because when we leave, when I used to take Tai Chi, and we'd always bow to our teacher. And every time we bowed to our teacher, he said, you're not bowing to me. You're bowing to my teacher, and you're bowing to my teacher's teacher, and you're bowing to my teacher's teacher's teacher. And so that's what we do on our way out when we honor the good words of those who come before us, who've toiled with language and have made it more accessible to us. And so I want to honor one of my favorite writers of their time, Ben Okri, by sharing his words. In ancient Africa, in Celtic lands, storytellers were magicians. They were initiates. They understood the underlying nature of reality, its hidden forces. The old Celtic bards could bring out welts on the body with a string of syllables. They could heal sickness with a tale. They could breathe life into a dying civilization with the magic of a story. To a thriving civilization, they could bring transformation with the potency of myth. In the old days, kings, leaders, warriors, and knights listened to epic tales and drew from them courage and inspiration. Again, that's Ben Okri. So may you story well. May you be storied well. And if any of you have questions, I'm going to stay on just a little bit longer and I can go over any questions that you have. And if you are complete, I invite you to take yourself off mute and say ahui ho. I'll see you later. Perhaps I'll see you on Tuesday. And there we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Farewell.
Voilà. Srećno.
Thank you so much, Leah.
Welcome. Kate, I see you got a question.
Here I am. Thank you so much for that, Leah. I said that I'm not a storyteller per se, but in fact, I've been telling stories of animals because I am an animal communicator working with my intuition for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And there's so much that you shared. And for me, what I think has happened though, is that I've given them the voice for all these years. I even have a membership community called the Harmony Pack. But I haven't totally found my voice with this. And I know it's time. I know it's time, but and how do I weave their teachings, which is all about healing the world and our relationship with the more than human world? How do I do that and weave my voice or my story in it without just being the teller of their stories. That's what I need.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, these questions come when we're ready, right? And it sounds like, in your journey around the archetypal clock, it's like you were this archetype for a really long time, and now you're shifting. And that's a weird moment. I just heard, when one door closes, another door opens, the hallway's a bitch, and not that door is closing, but it's like, right, you're like, it's not just my job to tell their stories. Now it's time for me and mine. And it might even be learning just to work with your voice in a different way. It might just start as simply as start singing. Like, what's my resonance? I've been dealing with your resonance for a long time, and harmonies, how beautiful is that? But what's my resonance? How do I, and just start like just starting right there. And then, right, tell a story that doesn't involve an animal. Tell a story about your history, your past. And it would be a discipline, I guess. It's because that's so woven into you. And that's been such an important role that you've played. And you've given voice to those who don't have a voice. But now something in you is saying, hey, whoa, I'm the voice that doesn't have a voice. Like, and so when that starts happening, right, there's something in you, there's obviously a story that wants to be told.
Beautiful. I'm looking, I mean, I definitely will sign up for the course. It struck me so much in my heart and in the most beautiful way. And how esoteric you were, that's where I live. So I love that part. I love that part. And so, but the question is, yes, how do I weave, and maybe I already do somewhat, my voice with their voices, and then, but it's about how can I increase my listenership, so to speak? How can I reach more beings, either with their stories, my stories, the stories combined? But I know how healing stories are. I get that, and I know how important they are. So that's what I need from the course. It's like I will give everything I've got to all of everybody within this class. But is that something that will be included, or that's a silly word, but does that fit?
Yeah, no, so I hear two different questions. One
Okay.
question is, how do I get my voice and like change roles a little bit so that I'm not just telling the stories of them and being their voice, but actually telling my own story, right? And then I also hear, wait, how do I get heard? Is that right? Am I understanding
Yeah.
right? And how do I reach more people? Right.
Right. Yes.
So slightly two different questions, and in terms of, and they're both, and so in terms of, part of my, part of my marketing brain comes on, how do I get heard? How do I get amplified? It's a kind of a different skill set, part of it happens through obviously a resonance, but there's so many practicalities in our everyday world now.
There are.
So
Yes.
what I would say is that every time you come into the course, you're entering into a group field. And the very first day I ask you, what's your intention? What do you want to get out of this? And then how can you put us to work for you? And how can you use this container as a container that says, this is what I am going to focus my attention on for the next 6 weeks? So it's going to be very easy for us to support you to tell your story. So I'm going to give you lots of creative prompts all along the way. And each week, you're going to have another opportunity to bring another story to life. Then you're going to choose one of those stories that you really want to hone, and you're going to tell that story to us at the end. Okay, so that's that part I'm not so worried about. The other part where we say, well, how do I amplify my voice? Well, that can be something where, bring those questions, if you have something really specific that you want to work on, but also you've got people like Maria around. I don't know if she's going to be in the class, but there's other people that are going to be there that might have other aspects to support you in terms of getting your stories into the world. But if that's something that you really want to focus on, I would just ask, and then we can do. But do I teach you how to publish? No. Do I teach you how to get on the stage? No. It's like what we're doing is how to awaken the storyteller, amplify, activate. How do we use this tool? And so that's what the real focus is on. I've seen people, in our very first course, one of the women in our course was presenting a paper at Parliament in Portugal, a lot of peace. And she started with a storyteller's prayer. Right? I never would have thought about that. Right? But she's someone who is involved in policy and politics, and she could understand that what she learned in this class was the power of listening and the power of what she had to give. And she learned that she could clear the way and make a place for deeper listening. And she said that everyone leaned in to really hear what she had to present. So I don't pretend to know all the different ways that people are going to use this knowledge to have their voice heard, but I do trust that if that's your path, it will reveal. It's a little
Understand. No, and it is the energetics that I'm interested in. I know I've been a solopreneur for all these years. I know it's
Mhm.
not that, it's the resonance. It's
Yeah.
the combined energy of everyone that will open those doors. And so I'm kind of answering my own question because you confirmed that. Yeah, it's not about the marketing, it's the energetics of it. Because somehow that piece, I've danced around it and but I just feel that there's a resonance piece, and it may be that disconnect between me, my story, and the animals, because I'm really good at bringing their voices through, whether it's cats and dogs or whether it's whales and giraffes and jellyfish, and I do it all the time, every week. And so it's how do I bring it together for the greatest healing of all? That is my goal, that service with the high capital S. So when you were talking about who the storytellers are and the healing that they support and channel and all of that, I totally get that. I totally.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing in you is that archetype of being that medium, that voice for those, that you've mastered that archetype. And I hear that there's this other part in you that says, hey, I would also like to be the archetype of Kate. And I
There you
want
go.
Kate's voice, and great. Like it's just time. Yeah.
It is time.
You have a place to do the other stuff, and now you get to have a place where, and that's going to be your job, Kate, is to only tell your own stories. It's going to be your job to not. Okay, you've got this other place, you do it. Okay, this is going to be something else that's because something else is asking to come alive and to speak through you, and it's your story. And when I didn't talk about this, but like sacred stories, they're not our story. Like when we come as a sacred storyteller, it's not our stories anymore. It's a giveaway. It's about everybody. It's a different kind of story. So it's another act of service. But
There, okay. Because that's intimidating to me too. It's scary. I mean, I've been on the stage. I'm fine with audiences in radio and TV and blah, 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 blah. But, when it's
Yeah.
just me, not a character, right? I'm telling their story or it's very different.
I understand. I understand.
Very
I want to make sure that Maria gets
Yes.
a question answered. I'm going to turn off the recording because I feel like we've
I know it's on the website, but I didn't see it.